Welcome back to Hannity and Colmes. I'm Alan Colmes. Last week, the President and First Lady hosted a child-rearing symposium at the White House. Their intent was to publicize some new information that shows children who receive lots of attention in the first 3 years of life have greatly enhanced cognitive and language skills. Now, just 2 weeks ago, a new study suggested children who are placed in high-quality daycare are just as healthy as children who are raised at home. In America today, can we have it both ways? Can parents continue to work and place kids in daycare without harming America's future, our children? Joining us from St. Louis, Missouri is Phyllis Schlafly, the president of the Eagle Forum. And in Los Angeles, we have prominent family attorney Gloria Allred. Thank both of you for being here tonight. Ms. Schlafly, that study I mentioned not only showed that children who went to high-end daycare did well in cognitive skills, some of them did even better than children raised in what you might call traditional family settings. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think the real key to it is how the baby is treated. And that study, as very well reported in the New York Times, showed that talking to the baby in the first year of life has a tremendous impact on the child's later ability to engage in general reasoning, problem solving, and intellectual activities. And I thought it was really a wonderful report. I think that's the reason all my 6 children are so smart, because I talked to them in the first year of life when they could not verbalize, but when it's very important for the child to hear words and to have the engaged attention of a loving adult.
They found that some of these kids who went to daycare had better social skills, related better to both genders. They had skills that kids who did not have daycare didn't have, and that would indicate that maybe sending a kid off to daycare is not a bad idea.
Well, it might depend on what age you're talking about. Sending a child off to daycare in the first year of life is not a happy event for the child.
Well, they studied kids in the first 3 years of life. Gloria, what's your reaction to this?
Well, I think it's very important because we have over 50% of all moms are now working outside of the home. And many of them are doing so, most of them are doing so because of economic necessity, and daycare is essential to them. I think what is really important is we need to have more daycare available because there are long waiting lists for daycare in many communities. We need to have affordable daycare, and we need to have high-quality daycare. And I think if we have all of those things, it's going to be beneficial to children and to women.
Gloria, it's like the war of conflicting reports. I have a couple of reports that conflict with this present one, but I want to quote to you, if I can, Dr. Burton White. He's the former director of the Harvard Preschool Project. And here's exactly what he said. He said, after more than 30 years of research on how children develop well, I would not think of putting an infant or toddler of my own into a substitute care program or on a full-time basis. This is somebody who studied this for a long period of time, wouldn't dare put his child there. A lot of parents, when they drop their kids off at daycare, they have a lot of anxiety about it. You understand that?
Well, that's true, and women are forced to go through these guilt trips, feeling terminally guilty if they work inside the home, taking care of their children, feeling terminally guilty if they work outside of the home and put their children in daycare. I say it's time to remove the guilt from women, as long as we can provide high-quality daycare where the children are getting a lot of interaction with adults who are involved with them, where the children are having their cognitive skills developed. Women shouldn't have to feel guilty, and I wonder if that professor was willing to stay at home with his children himself.
We'd love to have him on the program and ask him that.
The high-quality baby care is the quality of an adult who is really engaged with the baby, who is willing to give that baby the round-the-clock, loving, full-time attention. And there are just not an awful lot of hired people who will give the same kind of care that a mother will. The little baby is the most helpless thing in creation. It can only cry to let you know how and what it wants, and there isn't any real substitute for somebody who cares enough about that child. Now, the high-quality daycare is one-on-one, and that is so expensive that maybe the mother's better off to give it herself.
There was a recent study, National Association for Education of Young Children study that came out. There are 97,000 child care centers in the country today. Only 5,000 are accredited, and only another 10,000 seeking accreditation. And the study found that only 10% now accredited are rated good. 84% are mediocre, and I don't know if you're going to get the same kind of hands-on attention that a mother would give a child. Miss Allred?
I don't see how you could.
Well, I'm concerned because we do need to have accredited daycare. It's very important that mothers check out, and fathers too, to make sure that the daycare that they're placing their children in is accredited.
But there are only
that means
5,000.
that they've met certain standards, certain safety and health standards, and certain other standards that are necessary for accreditation to make sure that they at least meet the minimum requirements.
All right, we've got to take a break. We want to know what you think as well. Call us at 1-888-TEL-FOX, 1-888-TEL-FOX, and we'll be right back on Hannity and Colmes.
Welcome back to Hannity and Colmes. I'm Sean Hannity. We're talking about daycare in America with Phyllis Schlafly, the president of the Eagle Forum, and family law attorney Gloria Allred. Gloria, is it really possible to find anybody, be it at a daycare center or a nanny, that's really capable of raising your child the way you would, with all the intention and love that a parent would give a child?
Well, in some cases, they're going to be more involved with the child than a parent who has a lot of other responsibilities. I don't think we should denigrate or insult daycare people. I think the problem with daycare people, for one thing, is that they're underpaid, and in many cases they could earn more taking care of animals, taking care of dogs, than they would taking care of children. I think we need to raise their pay. I think we need to give them better training, and I think we need to give them more respect. But of course, many parents would prefer to stay home if they could, but it's just simply not economically viable for them. And while I know a lot of radical right-wing people, perhaps like Phyllis Schlafly, might like to try to make women feel guilty about working outside the home, I just think that that's wrong.
Well, Ms. Schlafly, you certainly recognize the need for more and more women to be in the workplace today, but, you know, in 1948, the average family of four was only giving up 2 to 3% of their income to the federal government. Today, that's over 30%. To what extent has taxation caused more women into the workplace?
Absolutely. The reason the wife usually goes to work is not to support the family, but to pay the family's taxes. And that is what is very different about our society today. And so the government takes a fourth of the income, at least, right off the top. And I hope we can discuss this subject without calling each other names.
Ms. Schlafly, if I may call you Ms. Schlafly, that's a good name. Is it your view that women should not go into the workplace unless absolutely necessary?
No, that's not my view at all. I wouldn't make a decision for any other woman. But I would point out that my observation of children and babies in life is that babies today are no different from babies 50 or 100 years ago. They still need a lot of care. They have not heard the call of women's lib. And so how are you going to do that? Now, the big reason why, the main reason why daycare is unsatisfactory is that you have a ratio between caretakers and children that is not 1-to-1, and the 1-to-1 is very expensive. The second problem you have with daycare is the diseases, and you have all these terrible diseases that go right through all the babies when they're in daycare that you don't have when you're taking care of a baby at home.
Can you acknowledge that there's an upside to daycare, which involves they engage in more complex play, they grow faster, they walk, they jump, they throw a ball sooner, they're better, as I said earlier, at social skills. All these things are very positive aspects, it seems, to kids who have this opportunity to get good daycare.
I think you're right, and I think it's important to realize.
I was asking Phyllis, and then Gloria, you can respond.
The new report that just came out in the New York Times last week said that the ability to engage in reasoning and rational thinking and problem solving is something that comes from the one-on-one mother talking to the baby during the first year of life. And that's really more important in the long run than how fast you can jump and play and throw a ball.
You know what I feel is very unfair and cruel and hypocritical of certain people in the right wing is that they supported moves to force women off of welfare, that's aid to families with dependent children, within a very short period of time, and force them into the workplace. It's often folks who say they're for family values are in fact forcing families to break up, severing mothers from their children early in life, saying that the mothers have to go to work outside the home.
Gloria, you can't blame that on the conservative movement.
For daycare.
Gloria, you can't blame that on.
That's wrong.
You can't blame that on conservatives. Pete, conservatives I know aren't saying that. They're just pointing out that there are flaws in daycare. That's all they're saying.
They've also voted for this so-called welfare reform, which is really forcing mothers outside of the home and breaking up families, and then you're going to blame them if they go to work and
Right.
put their children in
Ladies,
daycare.
we got to take a
I'm
break.
not blaming anybody, but of course
We'll
Clinton signed the bill, and most people do think that we need some radical changes
We
in
got
the
to take a
welfare
break.
system.
Stay right there. We'll come back and continue. 1-888-TEL-FOX. That's our phone number on Hannity and Colmes. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Hannity and Colmes. I'm Alan Colmes. We're talking about daycare in America. Let's go to Michelle in New York. Welcome to the show. Hi, Michelle.
Yes, good evening. My name is Michelle. As I said, I'm calling from New York. My question is, I respect everyone's opinion on the panel, but I must say, as a working parent, I try to provide my children with a quality of life. How can I do that in reference to the president of the Eagle Forum? She says that children need that one-on-one care. Well, what is the other solution? If I have to work to provide them quality of care, what's my choice?
You want to respond?
Well, it's very difficult, and each one has to make this own decision for herself. And you look around and you try to find some substitute care who will give your child the care that you would like to give. Maybe it's the grandmother of the child. Maybe it's somebody you can hire. You have to make that decision yourself. But I would urge you to think about the need that the baby has, and the emotional need, the verbal needs, the all-the-time, round-the-clock care. And if you can find some other way to manage so that you can do that yourself, I think you would find the rewards are great.
You know, Gloria Allred, 79% of working women, Los Angeles Times poll that came out a couple of years ago, said they would quit their jobs and stay home with their kids if at all possible. And the CDC pointed out that between 2 and 18 times, kids in daycare were more likely to come down with serious diseases. These are just general concerns, facts, objective data that parents need to know about before they send their kids to daycare, right?
And how did they poll fathers and see how many of them would quit their jobs and stay home with their children?
No, they didn't, not in that particular poll, but they did
How
poll mothers,
sexist.
working mothers, and 79% said if having the option, they would want to stay home. What does that tell you?
Well, that tells you that they would prefer to, but that economically that is not an option, as the caller said. And it isn't an option. And that's why we have to have affordable, available, accessible daycare.
You're saying the
But
government should be involved?
Daycare becomes not just a personal issue, not just an economic issue, but it's a political football. And all these politicians sitting in Washington, a lot of them, they want to scapegoat mothers, but meanwhile they don't provide the
Do
funding
you want
that
the
is
government
necessary.
to fund all of healthcare? You want the government that mismanages the money the way they do to now be involved in funding daycare for kids, especially after what happened to healthcare?
Let me tell you, we have public schools for children beginning at a certain age. We've had Head Start, which was an excellent program and is, and now we need to move up the time frame so that we have daycare at an earlier and earlier age available for persons who would like to put their
Gloria,
children
our
in
public schools
daycare.
don't even
Who
work,
cannot
Gloria.
afford private daycare.
Our
Not
public
everyone
schools
is
are a
rich and can
disaster.
hire their own private nanny. Let's get real. There are
Our
millions of
public
people out
schools
there
are a
who need
Ms.
disaster.
Schlafly,
public
you know, we're
daycare.
talking. There are different kinds of daycare, Ms.
You know,
Schlafly.
the problem with this is that the mothers who are taking care of their own babies are making great financial sacrifices to do that. And most of them are living at a very low, really low standard of living. Now, to come along and say you're going to take part of their tax dollars in order to provide babysitting for other women just plain isn't fair. And so I think each woman is going to have to make these decisions for herself. But to come along and say the taxpayers should provide you with babysitting services is really not fair to the mothers who are taking care of their own children.
This is not babysitting services. This is an educational opportunity for children as well. And we know that when we start education at an earlier age, children are better prepared when they go to kindergarten. They're better prepared for elementary school, and they're better prepared for education all the way down the line if they get a good and early start in life.
Well, let's be clear here, Ms. Schlafly. You know, when we think of daycare, we think of these huge daycare centers. Maybe 25% of kids are in those kinds of centers. A lot of daycare, in fact, 30% is daycare in people's homes where they're getting really the kind of attention they would get if they were in their own homes. It's
That
not
is
these
correct.
huge daycare centers.
And that is what most mothers who do have to use daycare would prefer. They would prefer to have a relative or a neighbor lady who takes in 3 or 4 other children and treats them along with her own children.
And they've
That
also
home-
found that children from impoverished homes who are placed in these kinds of daycare centers they develop better reading skills than poor kids who don't get this kind
I
of
guess we don't
daycare.
need mom anymore, right?
The
According to this.
home style daycare is certainly to be preferred to the institutionalized daycare.
All right, let's go to Shirley in Connecticut. Welcome to Hannity and Colmes. Hi, Shirley.
Hi.
Welcome. Go ahead.
I would just like to say that the liberal left would like our kids from cradle to grave. I have 3 kids who are home. They've never been in daycare, and they're all in the top of their class. And I would like to say if they cut the 720 programs in America down to the 50 for the most needy, we wouldn't have the high taxes. We can go back to where we were, where women could stay home if they wanted to, or choose a career and put their kids in daycare and pay for it themselves.
So Gloria and I, the liberal left, Gloria, you and I were ganging up to get these people's kids to take care of them, right?
Well, I mean, I think what we need is to provide options. We have millions of single moms out there, and they have to work outside the home, and so they need the option of daycare. They don't have the luxury.
Gloria, let me ask you a question.
Of staying at home.
Gloria.
Let me tell you, I had a daughter who was in daycare, and today she's a lawyer. So let's not pretend that daycare
Gloria.
is harmful to children.
Let me ask a difficult question. Is it wrong that maybe we request people to find themselves in a better financial position before they bring children into this world? And what I mean by that, they've got to be able to provide a roof over their house, health insurance, daycare, provide for the kids. It seems like we're moving more and more towards this society that doesn't take on responsibility, and we're placing that responsibility on other people who make good decisions. Is that fair?
Well, I'm not sure if what you're proposing is that people have to show a financial declaration before they're allowed to get pregnant.
Well, I'm asking if it's
a fetus to term.
It seems like we reward all the wrong behavior in this society, and we punish all the right behavior. And I'm wondering, how far can we go when the average American gives up half their salary already in taxes?
Well, are you saying that only the rich can have children?
No, I'm saying.
No, I'll bet the woman who called in was not rich. But what is unfair is to tax a woman like the one who just called in and say you've got to pay for babysitting for other women's children.
Well, this is not babysitting, though. The point is this: we're not talking about you're reducing it. When you say babysitting, you're trivializing what daycare is, Ms. Schlafly.
No. You don't think they're teaching them how to read in daycare. They're hardly even teaching them how to read after they go to school.
All right, well, reading skills, as I pointed out, are sometimes increased with certain kinds of daycare. We'll come back, though, and get some final thoughts when we come back from Ms. Schlafly and Ms. Allred on Hannity and Colmes. Please stay with us.
In D.C., hello.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Good, Kim. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I am a stay-at-home mom. I do work part-time. My mom watches my daughter a couple of days a week. I think what we have to begin to recognize is what is true family planning. True family planning is recognizing that you need to be home with your child. No one can nurture your child like you can. You can have, and I have worked in daycare, so I know what I'm talking about. No one can nurture your child like you can.
Good point.
And for those who feel they have to
I think
work,
I hear your child in the background,
Yeah.
by the way, Kim.
Yeah, that's
How old
my
is that
little
one?
one.
Oh, that's your little one?
She will be 4 next month.
Kim, it's a little late for a 4-year-old to be up, isn't it?
Well, we hang out.
Okay.
Listen,
But,
by the way, I think it's a good thing that they're watching Hannity and Colmes at this young age.
This is a
yeah.
good way to train them, get them to be good, thinking American citizens. Thank you very much for your call.
have a good one.
Let's go to
Thank you,
Jenny in Illinois. Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
You're
Jenny.
on. Go ahead.
I'm calling about the point that we're missing. The employers, the majority of them do not supplement daycare, and they really don't care that you have to leave work at 5 o'clock to pick up your kids. They want you there to do a job.
Yeah, but you see more and more, Jenny, corporations that are coming to they're understanding the needs and concerns of their employees, and they're providing different programs. A lot of big companies are now doing that.
And I think that's a good trend that more and more corporations are, in fact, providing daycare for their employees because it's reduced absenteeism, it's good for morale, it reduces employee turnover, and it's good for the children to be able to be near their parents. I think the primary relationship does have to be with a parent, but they also need daycare as an option.
I will have a moment left. Phyllis Schlafly, are you prepared for the eventuality that more and more women go into the workplace, the glass ceiling gets raised, more women are away from their families, and that we need better health care in America, and that's the direction we're going in this country?
Well, I don't think the trend is going any farther. I think probably the level of women in the workforce has already reached its maximum. Motherhood is a vocation that does require sacrifices, and I hope that women would consider that babies need you, especially in their first years of life, and that nobody you hire will ever give your baby the love and verbalizing and attention that you will.
Gloria, your final thoughts.
Well, I think that parents who work outside the home have nothing to feel guilty about as long as they have a strong bonding with their children and can have quality time with their children and pick a high-quality child care provider who is licensed and accredited. I think that they can go to work and still have a great relationship with their children.
Gloria Allred, Phyllis Schlafly, thank you both for being with us. Thank you for watching. That's it for tonight. Should women